Hello, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits. Welcome to my channel, and today we are going to crochet a beautiful striped sweater. This sweater is using the beautiful stitch called the Linked Half Double Crochet stitch, and it is such a beautiful textured stitch. It really stitched up beautiful for this sweater. Now, the construction of this is also very simple. It consists of just 4 basic panels, which we will just easily seam up at the end. 2 of the panels are the front and the back, which are exactly the same. You can see that I've already completed the front panel, and we will work on the back panel together. And then it has 2 identical sleeves, which we will work on one of the sleeves together. I've already completed the first sleeve. So what we're going to do these panels is we're going to start down here with the band, and we're going to crochet in this direction with a really nice ribbing stitch. Then we're going to pick up stitches on the edge here and then crochet in this direction for the remainder of each panel. So let's get started by taking a look at the materials we're going to use today. I am using a 6.0 millimeter crochet hook, and then I am using 5 different colors of a worsted weight yarn. I am using the Hobby Lobby Yarn Bee brand, the Soft and Sleek. And it's a really nice soft yarn for this sweater. Now I am using 5 different colors in a stripe pattern. You can do whatever you think will look great for what you're looking for. You can do just a solid color, just one or 2 colors, whatever you'd like. But I'm going to show you how I used all 5 colors in this sweater. So let's get started by working on that bottom band first. All right, let's get started by working on this ribbing waistband section first. We're going to be crocheting in this direction, and we're going to be using a very nice ribbing stitch. So I'm going to start with my color A. I will have the names of these colors in the written description below the video title if you would like to work in the same color palette, but of course you can choose whatever colors work best for you. So let's start by creating a slip knot. And then we're just going to be chaining 11 stitches. That's going to be for the width of our waistband here. That 11th stitch is going to be acting as our turning chain. Our width of our waistband is going to be 10 stitches wide. Okay, our very first row of this is kind of like a setup row because it's done just a little bit differently than the rest of the row 1 and 2 repeat. The setup row is going to be using a stitch called the yarn over slip stitch, and it's exactly as the name suggests. We're going to start with a yarn over and then do a slip stitch. We're going to start with the second stitch from the hook, not that last chain we did, but the second one here. Insert our hook after that yarn over, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then just continue to pull it through the rest of the stitches on our hook. Okay, so that's a yarn over slip stitch. Let's do it again. Yarn over, insert, pull it through, continue to pull through the remainder loops. Yarn over, insert, pull through, yarn over, insert, pull through, and pull through. Let's do that to the end of this first row. Here's our last stitch. Now we will chain 1 and turn our work. Now we are going to begin our row 1, 2 repeat. Row 1 of our repeat section is going to be a slip stitch, but we are going to be doing our slip stitch through the back loop only. So instead of inserting our hook through both of the V's like you normally would when you stitch a stitch, we are going to be working in only through the back loop only, this back loop, not the front, not both, just the back. So to do a slip stitch, we're just going to insert our hook through that back loop only, grab that yarn, pull it through, and pull it through the loop on your hook as well. That's just a basic slip stitch, but through the back loop. Insert it, pull it through, insert, pull it through, pull it through. Let's do this up to the very last stitch. In that last stitch, we are going to be actually going through both of the legs of the stitch, not just the back loop, by making our last stitch through both of the legs, it makes for a little bit of a smoother edge. So here I'm approaching my very last stitch, and I'm going to actually insert it through both of the legs and do my slip stitch in that way. All right, let's chain 1, turn our work again. Now we're going to be working on row 2. Row 2 is the same as the setup row with that yarn over slip stitch, but again, now we're going to be working also through the back loop only. And again, that back loop only stitching is what creates this nice ribbing. So that's what you want to make sure that you are grabbing the back loop only. All right, we already did our chain 1, so let's turn our work starting in the second chain from the hook here, or that first stitch, not the chain next to our hook. We will do the yarn over slip stitch through the back loop. So insert through the back loop only, pull through the other 2. Yarn over, back loop only, pull through, yarn over, back loop, pull through, yarn over. All right, we're gonna do this to the end of the row except for that last stitch where we are also going to only be going through both legs instead of only the back loop. And again, that just makes for a little bit of a smoother edge to that ribbing. Here's our last stitch. Let's go through both legs. All right, chain 1 and turn. Now we're back to row 1 where we're going to be doing these slip stitches through the back loop. Then you go back to row 2, the yarn over slip stitch through the back loop. Continue that pattern for a total of 14 inches. That's the size that I use for this sweater. It's about a size large. It's a nice roomy sweater. So I will do my 14 inches. I think that ends up being about 64 rows, and then we will continue with the remainder of this panel. I'll see you in a little bit. So I finished the ribbing section, the waistband of my sweater, and it actually ended up being 15 inches wide, not 14 like I mentioned earlier, so sorry I misspoke, but 15 inches wide, and it is 64 rows across. So now it's the same width as my front panel, and I ended with row number 1. Okay, so now we can go ahead with the remainder of the sweater. Now you can adjust the width of your waistband to make it bigger or smaller. Just keep in mind that your waistband width is going to be about 4 inches narrower than the torso of your sweater because this stitch is a little bit wider stitch, so it ends up being a little bit wider. So whereas my waistband width was 15 inches, the torso of this is actually about 19 inches. Okay, so if you're going to do some measurements, measure your torso, across your bust. And that for me was about 19 inches for just, the front panel. And then subtract about 4 inches to get how long you want to do your waistband. Okay, so now we can move ahead by picking up stitches along here and continuing to crochet the rest of the sweater. All right, now we are ready to start with color A, and with color A, we are going to be picking up the stitches across this row to continue with the rest of the sweater. So in order to switch colors like that, what I've done here is I've just cut off my old yarn here, just pull it through a little ways and remove your hook. Now I'm going to take my hook and insert it in that last loop of that last stitch, right in there. Then I can take my new yarn, my new color, and grab that color and pull it through that loop. Then we're going to do a chain 1 before we start picking up the stitches. Then at this point too, you can take your old yarn, that tail, and just pull it through, and that will stay put, and now you've kind of started with your color A. So now we're going to be picking up a stitch, and instead of starting with the linked half double crochet, which is the stitch for this entire panel of the sweater, we are going to do the first row in just single crochets as we pick up. Then we will move to the linked half double. So we're going to pick up a stitch at the end of every row. So we're going to pick up one stitch on this row where you can see the predominant V's. Then we will pick up the next stitch kind of in the valley between these two V stitch rows, and on and on. So we're going to pick up our very first stitch at the top of this V row. We're going to go right in between those two V's, insert in that hole, grab that yarn, do a yarn over, and bring through the loops on your hook for a single crochet. Now you're going to want to try to be consistent on where you're picking these stitches up at the end of the row. So that's where we're going to do pick up the stitches at the top of these V-stitch rows. The valley rows here between them, we're going to kind of identify the hole right to the left of that V-stitch. So right there, that's where we're going to insert our next stitch. Do a single crochet again. Now we'll go in the top of this V row and go right in between those two V's. Now we'll go into that hole right to the left of that V-stitch point where we did our last stitch. Insert here, pull it up, single crochet, and we're going to keep doing that for our entire row here, picking up stitches at the end of each row, being consistent on where you're inserting your hook. Okay, and when you're done, we had 64 rows. Since we didn't do that, pick up that stitch on the very end row, we're going to end up with 63 stitches total for our first row here. So let me continue picking up these stitches, and then I'm going to show you how to do the linked half double crochet stitch, which we'll use for the remainder of this panel. All right, I finished picking up my stitches on the edge of my rows. I have 63 stitches now for the duration of my panel, and now we can start by doing the linked half double crochet stitch. It's a really fun stitch. I think you'll really enjoy it. So we're gonna at the last stitch I picked up was on this last V stitch. I counted 63 stitches. Now let's do a chain 2 to start our next row. Now the linked half double crochet is a half double crochet stitch that is linked to the stitch prior. So the very first stitch that we're going to do is a little bit different than the rest of the stitches, only because we don't have a stitch prior to work with since it's the first stitch of the row. So we're going to use this chain 2 stitch to be our prior stitch that we're going to link to. So in that chain 2 stitch, the very first chain that we did, that's where we're going to insert our hook initially. Grab that yarn and pull it through, so you've got 2 loops on your hook. Now we're going to go into that very first stitch of the row, in through both V's of that stitch, the next stitch. We're going to grab that yarn, pull it through, so now you've got 3 loops on your hook, and then you're going to do another yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So that is your very first kind of modified linked half double crochet. Now we can proceed with the regular linked half double crochet for the rest of the row. So if you notice now on the stitch here, I've got 3 distinct strands of yarn there on that last stitch. We're going to work with that center strand of yarn and insert our hook through that center strand and pull up a yarn over, pull up a loop there. That's going to be that linked portion of our half double crochet. Then we're going to go into the very next stitch, insert our hook in that, pull a loop through. Now you've got 3 loops on your hook, do a yarn over and pull through all 3. So that is the linked half double crochet, where we start over on the last previous stitch and continue with the next stitch. Let's do that again. Here's our 3 strands of yarn. We're going to work with that middle strand by inserting our hook in that middle strand, pull a loop through, then go into the next stitch, insert, pull a loop through, then a yarn over and pull through the 3 loops on your hook. Okay, let's do it again. Middle strand, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Okay, middle strand, pull a yarn through, next stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 3. See, I make such a really beautiful stitch that it becomes much more evident as you go on. It's really a nice very textured kind of a variation on the half double crochet. So let me continue to do this all the way to the end, and at that point we're going to change colors again to our color C, and we will continue to do that. Now my color scheme that I'm chosen to do here is 5 different colors that I'm alternating through my color scheme. I'm doing 2 rows with one color and then 4 rows with the next. So here 4 rows, I'm doing this rust color for 2 rows, and then my green for 4, then 2, 4, 2, etc. That's the design I decided to go with. Again, you can use any color combination or do as many rows as you like with each color. Let me get to the end of this row. We'll change colors one more time and continue with that linked half double crochet. Okay, I'm nearing the end of the row here. I'm going to work my last couple linked half double crochets. And here's my last stitch. I've got one more stitch here, so one more linked half double. Okay, and now we're ready to switch colors to our next color, green. So to do that, we're going to do that very similar to how I switched colors earlier. We're going to just lift this hook up a little bit, remove the hook, and then you can see these 3 strands that we've been working with for our leaped stitch. We're going to insert our hook into all 3 of those strands, and then we can take our new color, in this case it's our green, loop it around the hook and pull it through all 3 of those loops. And now we're going to start our new row, and we're going to chain 2, just like we're going to do for every start of every row. And again, this point you can take the tail of your old yarn and pull it. It's going to stay in place. You can trim off the old yarn, and now we can continue to work the half double crochet with our new color, green. So we're going to turn our work, and now we're going to do that same stitch by taking that first chain of that chain 2, bring the yarn through, and then going through the very first stitch, yarn over, pull through 3. Now if you want, you can take the tail of your old yarn and the new yarn and just give it a little knot to give it a little bit more security. Sometimes that helps keep those last stitch from being too loose. But now we can continue with that linked half double crochet, this time with our new yarn. And we'll continue to work this for this entire row. Now I'm going to do this color for 4 rows, and then I will switch to my next color for 2 and my last color for another 4, and then repeat the process with my next colors. So I'm just going to keep working ahead, keep following my color scheme and my linked half double crochet stitches all the way to the end of my panel. So I will take some measurements and show you how long that is, and then we will start with the second sleeve. I wanted to give a quick update on how we are coming with this stitch and show you the stitch again. We're on a little bit of a lighter color so you can see the definition a little bit clearer. So here are my 3 strands where I am going to insert my hook in the middle one, pull a yarn through, and then go into the very next stitch and pull a yarn through, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. So here you can see it a little bit clearer with the lighter color. And again, just a really pretty definition stitch. Now I just want to give one quick word about your ends here. Obviously, since we're changing colors every few rows, you are going to have a lot of ends to weave in. Now I find I have a little bit better luck if I weave them in at the end instead of trying to incorporate them in my line of crocheting. I think they just stay a little bit more secure, but I do like to not be overwhelmed at the end with so many ends to weave in, so I do it kind of as I go. Now I've done quite a few rows here. Now I'm going to pause a little bit, weave in these ends so I get those taken care of before the end, but you do you and what you want to do to make this a little bit easier. Okay, I finished my second panel for my sweater with the linked half double crochet that I went all the way up to the top of my neckline, and it ended up to be 50 rows or about 19 to 20 inches from the start of my linked half double crochet stitch all the way up to the top. So now I have 2 identical panels, both the same, and now we are ready to start with the sleeves. All right, let's get started with our sleeve. As you see, I've already completed one sleeve, so now we're just going to do a second sleeve the exact same way as I did this first one. And we're going to really do it very similar to how we did the front and the back panels of the sweater, where we're going to start down here with a ribbing, then pick up stitches and continue with that linked half double crochet stitch all the way up the sleeve. The only difference with this from the front panels is that, of course, it's a little bit narrower because the sleeve is a little bit narrow width, but I'm also doing an extra row here before I start with the linked half double crochet, where I'm doing some increases so my sleeve will flare out a little bit. After you seam it together, it will have a nice tight cuff and then kind of blossom out for the rest of the sleeve. So let's get started with doing the ribbing here on the bottom. We're going to do it the exact same width as we did the ribbing on the base of the sweater. So we're going to start with our slip knot and do 11 chains. And we're going to start the exact same way we did with our ribbing on the front and back panels. By starting with the second stitch from the hook, we are going to do that yarn over slip stitch. And continue that stitch all the way to the end of this row. That's kind of our setup row for this. Then we're going to chain 1, and on row 1 of our 2-row repeat, we are going to do that slip stitch through the back loop only, starting with that first stitch, not the chain that we just completed. So we're going to do a slip stitch through that back loop only, all the way to the last stitch. And remember, on that last stitch, we are not doing it through the back loop, but instead going through both of the V's of the stitch. Here's my last stitch, so I'm going to go through both V's and do my final slip stitch. Okay, chain 1 again and turn, and now we will do that yarn over slip stitch all the way to the end, but again through the back loop only. So yarn over, back loop only, slip stitch. And again, on the last stitch, we will not go through the back loop only, but go through both legs of that stitch. Chain 1 and turn. Now we're just going to repeat those rows 1 and 2, the slip stitch and the yarn over slip stitch, both through the back loop. We're going to do that for a total of, let's see, 32 rows. Now that fit comfortably around my wrist, but of course you can lengthen that or shorten that depending on how you want it to fit around your wrist. So just kind of measure as you go and make adjustments as needed. So I will work ahead, get this cuff done, and then we will come here and pick up our stitches for the rest of the sleeve. All right, so my ribbing is completed. I did it for 32 rows, but your size may be a little bit longer or shorter depending on this, the size that you want it to fit comfortably around your wrist. So adjust accordingly. So now we are going to detach our color A and switch over to color B to do the picking up of the stitches here for the rest of the sleeve. Now we're going to be following this very exact same color pattern and sequence as we did for the front panel for each of the sleeves. So with color B, now we're going to do the exact same thing we did when we picked up the stitches for the front and back panel, and that is we're going to be doing a single crochet in the top of each of the rows of our ribbing here. So our very first one we're going to do with this top of this V, insert our hook and do a single crochet, and we will do that in the next top of the row, just like we did for the front and the back panel. So if you need to review that again to kind of remember where we're inserting our hook, you may do that. I will do that to the end, and then I'm going to talk about the next row, which we're going to incorporate some single crochet increases so we can have a little bit more flare to the rest of our sleeve than it is for the cuff. So I will see you when we're ready to do that. All right, at the end of this row, let's chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to do some single crochet increases to again give it that little bit of a flare for up the sleeve. So for the first 3 stitches, we're going to do a single crochet increase. So we're going to do 2 single crochet stitches in each of those stitches. So let's do our first one, do our second single crochet in that same stitch for 1 increase. Now we'll do 2 in this next stitch as well, 2 single crochets. And also in this third stitch, 2 single crochets. Now we'll switch to doing a single crochet increase every other stitch and do a regular single crochet stitch on the other stitches. So let's go to just 1 single crochet here and then do an increase, so 2 in the next stitch, then just 1, oops, and then we'll do 2 in the following, and then 1. And let's follow that pattern all the way till we have 3 stitches left, and then we're going to do increase in each of those last 3 stitches as well. All right, there's my single crochet in that stitch. Now the last 3 stitches, we'll do an increase in each of those stitches as well. So 2 stitches in each stitch. Okay, when you are done with that row, you should now have 49 stitches. That is, if you did the cuff the same width that I did. Of course, it will be more or less depending on the width of your cuff that you may have adjusted for your size. Okay, so now we're going to switch to our color C. For me, this was this green, and we're going to jump back in to doing this linked half double crochets for the rest. So just like we did before, I'm going to switch to my other color, and then we'll start the next stitch. We're going to start by chaining 2 with our new color, and then do that linked half double where we go in that first chain, pull a loop through, and then through that first stitch, pull a loop through, then yarn over, or pull through all 3. Then we'll go back to that middle strand, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. So this should be familiar to you. This is the linked half double crochet that we did for the entire front and back panels, and now we're doing it for the entire length of the sleeve. So continue to follow your stitches down this row and your color sequence all the way up to where you would like the length of your sleeve. So that as well can be adjusted. You can make it long or short depending on the style that you'd like to go with for the sweater. All right, I've completed my second sleeve, and I did my sleeve for a total of 42 rows of my linked half double crochet, and that ended up to be about 16 inches from the cuff to the top of the sleeve. So again, you can adjust this to be longer or shorter depending on how the length of your sleeve. So now that our sleeves are done and our front and back panels are complete, now we can start seaming it together. So we're going to first start doing the shoulder seam of the front and back panels. All right, we're going to start by seaming the top little shoulder parts from the front and the back together. Now you can see I put some stitch markers already in place because I just measured on myself how wide I wanted my neckline to be. And that ended up to be about 10.5 inches. So I placed those stitch markers equal distance from the edge and 10.5 inches apart. Turns out to be about 5.5 inches from the edge here on each side, and 10.5 inches in the middle. But you can make your neckline as wide or narrower if you'd like. Now I also put the wrong sides of my fabric together. Now you can identify which side is the wrong side by the ribbing here. So the right side of your ribbing has a wider and closer together ribbing. The wrong side is the more narrow and further apart ribbing. So to put the wrong sides together, connect your top's edges, and now we're going to be seaming in these 2 sections here. Now you can choose whatever seaming method you like to do. I am going to do the mattress seam. It's a fairly nice flat stitch and pretty invisible with the yarn that you're stitching with. I'm choosing this green to do the stitching on here, so it will blend in nicely with my crochet. Let's remove our stitch marker and just connect these corners with a stitch, pulling from one side to the other, leaving a bit of a tail. Now I'm going to go in my next stitch by going from the inside here of my seam to the outside in the next stitch and go through both legs of that stitch. Pull it, you don't need to pull it too tight quite yet. Now I'm going to go on the other side from the inside to the outside with my next stitch going through both legs of that stitch as well. And then again, go to the opposite side in the next stitch from the inside to the outside. And then again on this side, always going from the inside to the outside. After you've done a few stitches for maybe an inch or so, you can take your ends and give it a nice little tug, and that will tighten up the stitches and make for a nice flat seam on both sides. Okay, so now we're just going to continue in this fashion till I get to my stitch marker, and then I will get another piece of yarn and go from the stitch marker to the corner as well, and then the top will be complete. All right, how do we look here? I got my top of my seaming done. It's a really nice flat seam. I just secured the ends here at the corner of my neck. Beautiful seam. Okay, so now we're going to take our sleeves and attach it to the sides here of the front and back. All right, we're ready to attach our sleeve. Here's our sleeve here on the top, and here is the front and back panels with my neckline coming down, or my shoulder line coming down straight here. Now this is kind of important to make sure that you are positioning your sleeve in the right spot. You want to make sure that the edges of your sleeve are lining up in the same position of your front and back panel. Now it's easy to do that with stripes because we know exactly which stripe we want to end up. So my edges of my sleeve are lining up right in this rust color stripe. Doing that will assure that when we fold our sweater down and seam underneath the sleeve and down the side of the sleeve, that our stripes will line up correctly. It's not going to be off kilter like this. We're going to want to make sure that it's lined up with the sleeve edges lining up in the exact same spot on both sides of the panel. Okay, we're going to do the exact same stitch we did for the top of the neckline with the mattress stitch. This time, however, you don't have a really nice clean edge on this side. You do on this side. You've got your nice edges of your stitches. So just as you pick up the stitch on one side, just stitch it with the couple strands of yarn directly across from it, just making sure that you're staying nice and even and ending up on the same spot on both sides. Okay, so let's seam this together. We'll do the exact same thing with the second sleeve, and then we'll put it all together and seam underneath the arms and down the sides of the sweater. All right, once you have the sleeves attached to your front and back panel, then you are ready to seam under the sleeve and down the side of your sweater. So you want to just kind of fold your sweater in the sweater position like I have here and line up the edges of your sleeve here right at the armpit. And then you're just going to do the same mattress seaming that we did for the rest of the sweater, and just making sure that your stripes are lining up when you do the seaming. Now, my mother was a seamstress and she was a stickler for lining up plaids and stripes, so that rubbed off a little bit on me. So I'm just really going to make sure that my stripes are lined up. It'll make your finished product look so much more professional. Now, another tip, I found that when I am seaming together two edges that, don't have a really nice edge like these top ones did where you could pick up each stitch, I found that putting the right sides together and then seaming seems to make a little bit more flatter seam on the right side. So I would suggest turning your sweater inside out before you do these final seaming down the sides and under the arms. So I will do that on both sides of the sweater, and then we will come back and see how everything fits. All right, we are done with our sweater. We've completed the seaming underneath the arms and down the side, and it really is a nice, perfect fit as well. Now this stitch produced a really thick, cozy, warm sweater, so it is perfect for the fall, and it was really easy, right? Just 4 panels, front and back, 2 sleeves, some very simple seaming, and any beginner crocheter can do this project with ease. So I hope you like this video. If you do, please subscribe or comment or like, because I do all sorts of fun videos all about crocheting and knitting, tips and techniques, fun stitches, and creative patterns. So thanks for watching, everybody. Happy crocheting!